This story is the creepiest thing I've ever experienced, the one after which I started to get gray hairs on my head at the age of 23. I've never experienced such horror. It all started when I was an ordinary student who was not satisfied with life in the dormitory. Shared toilet, shower, kitchen, constant scandals because you simply have to wait your turn to go where you need to go. Well, it's too much, friends. Anyway, I freaked out, weighed all the pros and cons, and decided to rent an apartment after all. I studied well, got an increased scholarship, and sometimes worked part-time. In general, she contacted a realtor and rented the simplest apartment on the outskirts of the city. Well, not an apartment, of course, what do I need? Just as long as it had amenities. The price was surprisingly small, but the apartment was not in very good condition. After classes the next day, I packed my bag and went to my new place. Wow. Judging by the furnishings and the layer of dust in the apartment, no one had lived here for a long time. Apparently there was only one normal room. The other was filled with old junk, broken furniture, clothes, and so on. The landlady told me that I could throw it all away if I wanted to. She simply didn't have time for that. The next day I excused myself from the university. Luckily I was a good student and had normal relations with my teachers. I started to put the apartment in order, slowly taking out the junk from the second room. In short, I cleaned, and put in order everything I could. By 6 o'clock I was tired and lay down on the old creaky sofa in the hall and fell into a dream. I woke up with a wild feeling of hunger. It was already dark outside the window. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. In general, I decided to go to the store, buy a couple of packets of sausages, and something else to munch on. My stomach was just humming and tearfully begging me to do something about it. That's when the first weirdness started. I came out of the entrance and noticed an interesting picture. The light in almost all the windows of my house was not on, and where it was on, it went out after a couple of minutes. Again, it was 9 o'clock, the beginning of the 10th. And what? Everyone is asleep, right at this hour? It's weird. I understand pensioners, but there are young people in the house. I went around the house just for the fun of it. Same on the other side. Weird, that's okay. I didn't think much of it at the time. I shouldn't have. The store was close to home, so it didn't take me more than 20 minutes to store. There were still no lights in any of the windows of my house. There was only a dim light bulb under the entryway, and that wasn't mine. It only came to me now that it might have just been a simple blackout. And with this thought, I went up to my apartment on the 4th floor. When I entered the apartment, the first thing I did was reach for the light switch. Apparently the light was on. That's strange. So the power hadn't been cut off after all. I was distracted from this thought by the gurgling of my stomach, and I quickly went and cooked cheap vermicelli and the same sausages. And then the following happens. I distinctly heard the switch in the hallway flick and the light went out, so I quietly went out into the hallway and turned it back on. It didn't stay on for long. After about 5 minutes, I heard the switch flick again, and the light went out, so I went to turn it on again. But as soon as I turned on the light in the hallway, I heard the switch click from the kitchen, and the light went out in the kitchen. What the hell is this? Anyway, again I put it down to fatigue and the fact that the apartment is aging and there's no telling what's wrong with the wiring. But still, the thought that it was all rather strange did not leave me. After a hearty dinner, my eyes began to droop. I was too lazy to make up the couch and undress. In short, I fell asleep and passed out instantly. In the morning, I was very weak, and with great difficulty I was able to get out of bed and go to the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. And then I noticed something peculiar. When I went to bed last night, I forgot to turn off the light in the hallway. And what do you think? It was off this morning. I felt terrible, but I had to get to the university somehow. I got ready and left the apartment. It took about 30 or 40 minutes. And here's the point. As soon as I stepped out of the driveway, I felt better. The weakness was slowly disappearing, fresh air, all that. I thought that's what helped me, but again, I was very wrong. It was late fall outside, it was getting dark early, and I was getting home in the dark. As I approached the house, I saw the windows of the house go out one by one. I felt weak and apathetic again. Everything seemed to be fine, but my mood was gone, and these windows. For some reason, that thought just got into my head. I don't know, but it was stressing me out more and more. When I got to the entrance, I saw a man of about 40 or 50 years old. Class was over, It was late fall outside, it was getting dark early, and I was already getting home in the dark. As I approached the house, I saw the windows of the house going out one by one. I felt weak and apathetic again. Everything seemed to be fine, but my mood was gone, and these windows. For some reason, that thought just got into my head. I don't know, but it was stressing me out more and more. When I got to the entrance, I saw a man of about 40 or 50 years old. He was smoking a cigarette and was about to go in, but I stopped him. "Good evening." "I apologize. It may sound silly and ridiculous, but why does everyone turn off the lights in the apartment so early? Are you saving money?" He turned around, looked at me glumly, and said something like, "That's right," and moved to his apartment on the first floor. As he opened his front door, he apparently changed his mind. Came back to me, said, "Boy, when it gets dark, start turning off the lights right away." He said it with some kind of anxiety. Why is that? Because, do as you're told, and you'll be safe. That's when the goosebumps ran all over my body. The guy turned around and went to his room. I went up to the 4th floor of the dark entrance. I shone a flashlight from my cell phone. My neighbor's words lingered in my head. Anxiety was creeping up on me. As soon as I crossed the threshold of my apartment, the weakness increased even more. I wanted to sleep, but the term paper wouldn't do itself. So I sat down at the table, took all my waste paper out of my bag, and started to work. Before turning on the desk lamp, I brewed myself a strong cup of coffee. The coffee didn't help much, and after maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, I passed out at my desk. I woke up in the night in total darkness. The desk lamp was off, but I kept it on. I was wide awake and I heard it. Someone ran down the hallway, and I swear to you, I heard a stomping sound like a child running. Fear gripped my body. I couldn't move. I sat stupidly at the table and listened into the darkness. With great difficulty, I managed to turn on the desk lamp. What happened next just doesn't make sense to me to this day. I heard running in the hallway again. Only the footsteps were much more frequent than the first time. It felt like several children or dwarfs were running. The footsteps weren't heavy. I wouldn't say they were the footsteps of an adult. I sat still for about 10 minutes. There was nothing else going on. Slowly I began to come to my senses, so I closed the door to my room, lay down on the couch, and tried to sleep. But of course, what sleep could there be after that? I distinctly heard frequent footsteps. Suddenly, the light of the table lamp went out. Again there was a click. Someone had turned it off, but who? What was even going on here? Already, probably in a rage, I jumped up from the couch and turned on the desk lamp. I wish I hadn't done that. I want to say that this lamp illuminated about half of the room, and literally in 5 or 10 seconds the door to my room with a very loud rumble flew out into the corridor, as if I had been taken out with a run by some special forces. At that moment there was no doubt in my mind that something paranormal was going on in the apartment. I heard the stomping again, but now I could see what was making the sounds. I could clearly see a creature running into the darkness. There was no other way to call it. I couldn't see the details, but it was moving on 4 very long limbs and moving very fast. Fear gripped me. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought it was going to fall out of my chest. And I stood there like an asshole, and I couldn't do anything. And from behind me I heard the click again, and the light went out. I immediately rushed to the switch that turns on the main light in the room. No sooner had I turned it on than the light bulb burst with a crackle. Something began to move with fury and despair. Darkness reigned in the apartment. After that, everything seemed to calm down. There were no footsteps, no sounds. There was complete silence and darkness. And I sat under the wall for another 15 or 20 minutes. Only now my body began to obey me a little, and I decided to get the hell out of this apartment. I didn't care that it was freezing outside. I went out into the hallway and tried to turn on the light again. The light bulb in the hallway was on. From the second room where the old junk was lying, something was looking at me. But it was never a person. It felt like it was peeping at me, just staring and staring. Again, the hallway light was on and I could see it clearly. It was pale, bald, its eyes were black, and it had no nose at all. It was very thin and had very long limbs. Now it was clear to me why the neighbor had warned me and why this apartment had cost me so cheap. The stare with this thing lasted about 2 minutes. Maybe 20, maybe half an hour. I don't know. When you're standing there stiff with terror, you don't really get a good sense of time. Suddenly there was another one peeking out of my room, and from the kitchen, they all rained down on me like I was a piece of meat, and slowly began to emerge from the darkness and move toward me. Seeing this, I gathered my wits and rushed to the front door. When I opened it, I ran down the stairs without looking back, and a minute later, I was outside. Looking out my window, I was shocked. The light was still nowhere to be found, but I could clearly see movement and the tugging of the curtain in the kitchen window. I had nowhere to go. After standing under the doorway for 2 hours and freezing, I decided to come home only to pack my things and get the hell out of here. Everything in the apartment was in its place, except for the broken doors and the broken light bulbs in the hall. It took me about 10 minutes to pack everything up, but it wasn't completely decomposed yet. And I left the apartment. The neighbor was standing under the doorway smoking. I passed him, and behind me I heard his question. "Did you see them?" I didn't pay any attention to him. "I told you to keep the lights off. They only behave calmly in the darkness, but as soon as you turn on the light, they get violent." Those words sent a chill down my spine. So I'm not imagining all this? It's not a dream? It was real. But what is it? I had no answers to that question, as you can imagine. I moved back into the dormitory. Everything fell into place. But I'll never forget that night, thanks to the strand of gray hair on my head.